Hi, everybody. It's Alex Jarett with Technology Executives Club, and I am really thrilled to introduce to you Dennis Anderko. Dennis, how are you?
Good, Alex. Thanks for having me on. Good to see you again.
Great to see you. Looking mighty dapper today. So, Dennis Anderko is the managing director at the Judge Group,
Right.
and Dennis and I and some of the other folks from the Judge Group have been working, gosh, forever. I think you guys qualify as my longest running sponsor and more than sponsor partner because you guys always help get people to the events and just really grateful for you and everybody at the Judge Group. But Dennis is a great guy. You're a golfer too, I understand, and you keep telling me. And I'm welcome to
Not
the
a good
board of
golfer.
yeah.
Not a good
Okay.
golfer, but
Yeah,
I
now
enjoy it.
we'll have to bet. So, but anyways, seriously though, welcome to the Board of Advisors. We're really thrilled to have you. And I think you can really help people on what is probably one of the defining topics of this last couple years for sure. And I think it's going to be for a long time, which is, you know, staffing and consulting and recruiting. I may not be using the exact phrases that you all use, but just in
Yep.
terms of people, talent. How would you describe what you do there, just real quickly, just for context purposes for everybody?
Well, I think you nailed it, right? As far as what I consume
Uh,
most of my time in day to day, Alex, it's working with enterprise to mid-sized to small cap companies with particularly within technology staffing. So we're helping with placing contractors, contract to hire, direct hire, executive search. So really across your staffing models, across industries and across tenure levels and like I said, across skill sets. So it runs the gambit, and Judge has been around for 53 years. So the company I'm with, it's a big household name, and we do a lot more than staffing. We do a lot within, global managed services, so a lot of project and consulting based work all
uh,
over the world, as well as training as well. So, but
oh,
I'm mostly tied to the recruiting arm of our company.
yeah, the companies continue to grow year by year, so it's amazing. But anyways, well, welcome here. And what we like to do is, as I know we talked about this before today, but what we like to do for everybody is we like to go a little over your background, how you got here, and then talk about your key lessons learned, and then as importantly, what areas can you help people with in terms of coaching and mentoring, as well as, of course, the service itself, but in terms of just helping people, because one of the roles of being on the board of advisors is you're actually a board of advisors, not to me, although I'm sure you'll continue to give me good advice, but to the community. That's really how this is set up, is that our board of advisor members are for our community to really help people get through the next. Gotta tell you, with the changes that are going on in technology, I think it's going to be the defining moment of the technology industry for a very long time with AI and everything coming up. So to help people get through all that.
Yeah, and I
So
think that's what made becoming a board of advisors such a no-brainer, Alex, is some of the lasting partnerships that you and I have already built with some of that community and some of your
yeah,
networks. So this has really just seemed like a logical extension of that, right, to further that community and network. So definitely looking forward to that aspect.
well that's great. So let's talk about your background real quickly, because to be honest with you, it's not short. Well, it is in years compared to me, unfortunately, but you've been doing this for a while. But I say you hit the lottery right away because you went to school over at where did you go to school here?
Bloomsburg University.
Yeah, Bloomberg in Pennsylvania,
Yep.
which is a great school. I looked it up; it's a great school. And then you worked for a little bit at McDonald's as an intern, which is awesome. But then you got this job right out of college, and you grew your way up. You worked your way up to the point now where you're managing director, and I think you got a pretty substantial team working with for you that you're leading across the entire Midwest and beyond, right?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, I had no intention. I didn't graduate with the goal of going into what I'm doing now. So,
Yeah.
when I was going to school, I studied marketing. right?
Yeah.
So I know you're a big marketing guy, right? So I
Yeah.
was
I love marketing. Yeah.
the 4 Ps and all that good stuff. And like you said, I did an internship with McDonald's when that was
Yeah.
before they centralized all of their corporate offices to Chicago. They used to have corporate offices around the US. So, I wanted to work for a big known brand within marketing and kind of climb there. And, I fell into staffing. I had a friend that was doing it, that was doing recruiting, sold me on it. And I'll tell you what, it took about 3 months of actually doing the job, and I was hooked. And here I am a decade later, going on 12 plus years later. So yeah, time
That's
has
great.
come by. Yeah.
But a lot of people do stuff for 12 years and they're not rising like you are. So just to give you credit, you've done a great job. And I see you in action helping people. The thing I like about the way you work, it's really about relationships. And you really focus on relationships. I've seen you in action. Like, I can't tell you how many people in the last 10 years, folks have called me and said, hey, I'm looking for my next opportunity. And I'll tell you, Dennis is always there for these people. And so I appreciate that, because when someone's really in need, they got a family and they got expenses and something happens,
Sure.
people need to move as quick as they're able. And sometimes, depending upon the market, it may not be so easy for some people. I think now there's a lot of tech people just got dumped onto the market in the last few months. So what was really easy maybe 8 months ago, now for some people, it probably got hard.
Sure. Yeah. And, it helps that Judge Group works with, about 60 of Fortune 100 companies. So we do work with the largest employers, and we have 30 offices across. So there's that scale, and Chicago happens to be where I sit, one of our largest hubs. But partnership has become a little bit of a buzzword in relationships.
Yeah.
And I like to consider myself like more old school with, meeting people in person and actually getting to know somebody and building a true relationship. I just think it really helps in business. I think it helps in every facet of life, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. But, that trust is earned over time, whether it's working with somebody that we're ultimately going to place or work with to staff their critical projects. It's not just a buzzword, right? It has to be real. It has to be felt, and that takes work and it takes time. So something I learned early on, that if you can establish that, it comes back full circle and it creates a win-win scenario for everybody that's involved.
I know from watching you actually do it, but how do you actually do it? So there's different scenarios. Obviously, I just mentioned the person who's looking, and you're always gracious with your time on that. But if you meet a new CIO, and these guys and ladies, they have people hitting on them 10 times a day at least. What is your approach, Dennis, that's different when you meet somebody new in the community who might have a real question for you, but they don't want to get hounded, by anybody. So how do you approach that?
Yeah, well, I think since COVID, not just, the industry that I'm in, but probably across industries, you have these virtual meetings and they stack up all day, and that's great. There's efficiencies, but it's tough to really build a relationship when it's flashing, your meeting's about to end in 5 minutes, right? And that type of thing. So I really try to get out of the office, and whether it's tied to technology executives club networking event, or coffees or lunches or happy hours, actually like get in front of somebody in person. I think there's tremendous value in that. And I think that's something since the pandemic that has gone a little bit by the wayside, but I definitely value that. You can see I'm in the office here today. My teams come in the office, right? For the most part. And we collaborate and build those relationships together. So that's one part of it. The other thing is, just asking somebody, it doesn't have to go right to somebody's resume or right to their technical environment, but, getting to know somebody a little bit, I think that's important. And I think that, helps, but everyone's so busy, right? And it's so all business, but I think setting the stage, and like I said earlier, taking some time, comes back full circle.
I think that's a pretty important insight. And you mentioned something I hadn't actually thought of before this conversation is like when COVID hit, we all went to these virtual meetings. I think you're right about that. And
Yep.
now it became more efficient. We all thought. But really, stacking your day up with meetings doesn't necessarily mean that you're efficient because you may be doing a lot of the wrong things. So I think what I'm hearing you say is, meeting, if we can focus on relationships with the right people, your true partners, you're going to get a lot more done, don't you think? Than how many meetings can I do in a day, with all these different vendors or people that I'm talking to? Because we have the peer advisory program, and I talk to our CIOs all the time. They get exhausted at the end of the day.
Yep.
And so I think having people they can trust is actually very important. So you talk about, and I think that goes right into your next comment that you've been saying. You have this saying that I've heard you say, quality over quantity. And what do you mean by that? Is this what you're teaching your team, or is this something that you're also like? If somebody says, "Hey, I'm trying to hire people," like, does that fit in for both scenarios? Like, if I'm a CIO and I'm trying to hire people, do you say what would be your advice to them? Maybe that ties in with quantity over quality, but how do you sort of look at that?
Yeah, well, I think it's not about how many candidates you place. Ultimately, it's how well they're going to fit into the role, right?
Yeah.
So, and that works both ways, right? If I'm working with a CIO that is looking for their next opportunity, or if I'm working with a CIO that needs help with standing up their EPMO or their DevOps environment, right? So it's trying to actively listen more than I'm talking, and really understanding what the need is, what the issues have been, and I see in the business that I'm in, there's a trend with responding as quickly as possible, and some of the industry has been somewhat transactional, right? So it's
I hear you.
yeah, and it's I don't. If I'm a hiring manager, I don't want to look through 50 resumes to get to the right person for the job. I want to work with somebody that has a short list of 3 to 5 to 7 qualified candidates, talk with 4 or 5, bring 2 or 3 in, and make an offer, right? So I think when you focus on quality, you find those efficiencies, and everybody's plate is this big and they have this much on it, right? People are busier than ever. At least I know I feel that way, but I think a lot of executives do. So when you find those efficiencies, it doesn't only bring more time back in the recruiting process, but I mean, it'd be hard to qualify, right? How much time that brings back with the right resource in that role over time, right? It'd be exponential, I would say.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. So obviously you've got people on your team that if somebody has, hey, I want, I'll call these guys up and we'll work with you. Obviously, if they are, some of them are going to be somewhat, I would say, demanding and say, fit these 5 people and we'll develop a relationship after you help us at first. But there's going to be some what I call old school folks out there also that you're listening to this interview, you might say, all right, then this is the right approach for me, because I actually think that the listening and the relationship really is everything. If I listen to the peer advisory members, and folks, if you don't know our peer advisory, that's the CIOs and other executives, some CFOs and COOs are involved, who meet regularly and help each other. And partnerships is really something that's really come around stronger during the pandemic also. So having the attitude of looking for the right partners, I think, is helpful. Now, you mentioned continuous learning when we talked getting ready for this as well. How does that fit in to your approach? I would think with your team for sure, for yourself, but also for people that you're helping place. Because if you talk about finding the right people for the role, I think coaching these people to do a good job That's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%, especially that the field that I'm in, right, which is all around technology where I
Uh-huh.
focus. It's just ever changing. And, doing this for over a decade, there's been so much change, even within that time with technologies and methodologies and processes and all these different things. So I'm still learning every day. I mean, you've mentioned some of the success that I've had in my career so far, but
Yeah.
I'm still growing, and I think that the learning aspect with, we talked about AI last week. We've talked in the
Yeah.
past about advanced data analytics. Like, I think it's going to be exponential, and it makes me really excited about what I do for a living with it being in technology, because I
Yeah.
think that you have to continuously learn and sharpen your tool set, or you can become a dinosaur pretty quickly, right? And lose out. And the other thing is, I learned from my team as well. I mean, I'm so proud.
That's a good comment. Yeah.
Well, I have one of the best teams, or I have the best team, I think, in the company, and I have leaders around me that I trust, that I learn from, and we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and I think when you surround yourself with leaders, or team members that have the upward mobility and the want and are coachable, it really creates a great culture, great atmosphere, and we embrace that continuous learning here at Judge. We embrace it with our consulting workforce. Like I said earlier, we actually own a technology company, so we have a whole brand, Judge Learning Solutions, that does custom e-learning and technology training and
Yep.
things like that, OCM. So very, very much part of our DNA. But yeah, like I said, I know, I guess a decade goes by fast, right, in this business, but it's a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. So always
So when you
trying
get the when you get to my age, you're like, where did it go?
to, yeah. So
So
I would, yep, yep,
that's a good insight to have, though. Just as long as you're enjoying yourself. I mean, this is now me talking. You hope that as much of your day as possible is something you enjoy. You know, uh, it is still work, no matter what. No matter, I don't care what you're doing. You could be a movie star, a musician, whatever. It's that's an author or doing what you're doing, what I'm doing. You just want to find the joy in those moments, Dennis.
yeah.
Because
Well, yeah,
having said that, I think part of this is actually going to sound corny. You get to a point where you realize if I just help somebody today, one person do something,
sure,
I
yeah.
feel good. I know you feel the same way. In fact, you get a better sense of a bigger picture here, right? So um, but you mentioned seeking mentors and mentees as a big part of your philosophy. Now, how do you actually, first, what does that mean to you? Everybody, I've heard that phrase before, obviously. How do
Yeah.
you actively go about doing that? And how do you recommend people watching this for their own career can say, okay, I'm going to listen to Dennis here?
Well, I think I got kind of lucky in this department,
Yeah.
because I just naturally formed these partnerships with folks that were either in executive or ended up being in executive roles,
Uh,
and and just have really maintained not just those relationships, really friendships, right? But really true business partnership. And when
yeah.
I say business partnership, that is not a term that I would throw out lightly, right? But having a true like trust there. And I think I got lucky early in my career to identify a few of these folks. I think they saw something in me, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it was work ethic, right? Maybe it was something else that allowed me to kind of go under their wing earlier in my career. But having somebody to bounce an idea off of that you're not sure on, or just catch up on what they're seeing, get a different perspective, share knowledge, I think is been so integral to my success. And I would encourage, whether you're a senior executive or just getting started out or mid in your career, it's important to have a mentor in business and maybe in life, Alex, right? But to bounce those things off of. I know for me, it's helped out a tremendous amount.
That's awesome. Well, part of the role here is just to be available to people if they have any questions or whatever. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I
Yeah.
think you've got some really good insights, and I think you were fortunate. So offering to give back to some folks and help them is really nice. Last two areas that you mentioned that I want to just cover when we were getting ready for this. You said market cycles are inevitable. So what do you mean by, obviously we know that happens, but what do you mean by that in terms of the context of either getting a job or finding people to do your work for you?
Well, again, going back to, me being fortunate to find a great mentor early in my career.
Yeah.
I also got very fortunate with market cycles. I mean, I graduated in 2011, Alex, and it was pretty much a boom, right? Up until somewhat recently. But now we're seeing this volatility the last few years, and the IT job market goes through these cycles of high demand and low demand, and that's stressful. Now it helps with Judge because we do so much with contractor placement and with direct hire placement. So the pendulum does tend to swing within these cycles, which is great because with our network, usually there's still opportunities. But I mean, you and I both know that there's really hard times from an economic standpoint, and maybe we're in one of them right now, coming out of all the growth that we saw in COVID. So, I think it's important to back to the Technology Executives Club and networking, right, and having those resources that you can keep in touch with. It certainly helps in maintaining a positive outlook.
Yeah, I agree. Well, just knowing that there's cycles, and I think is helpful for people. Well, let's get into the areas that you like to help. We'll talk about mentoring other people. You mentioned a couple areas to me when we were getting ready about where you think you can help and add value to people. So what you want to run through those? You got the list here? You can just kind of run through them and talk through them, or do you want me to help you prompt you with those? Go ahead.
No, happy to. And I know we've done the webinars where I've kind of spoken to trends that we're seeing in the IT staffing market.
Yep.
So, I'm very current, and I have a great marketing and resource team here at Judge that I also lean on. But as far as what we're seeing anecdotally, but also with real data around just market trends, market insights from technology, from best practices in talent acquisition, strategies for building high-performing teams, really. And that's something we've talked a ton about. We've talked about certain technologies that are more in demand than others, and then how those technologies make up skill sets. You take artificial intelligence. It's this broad term. It's hard to define it. We've been involved with AI projects for over a decade, right? We expect, over the next few years, that's going to grow over 50%. So that's very exciting, but there's also a lot of confusion there. So those types of conversations, I think, is where we can add a lot of value, not just in the data, but what we're seeing some of our enterprise clients doing and what's been successful, what hasn't.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't seen any of our webinars, you can go to our site and you can get the most recent ones by joining our Insiders Club. In fact, get them all. I give the webinars, the virtual seminars now away on the Insiders Club. But I think what we'll do, Dennis, because you give great insights, is I'll start just releasing your segment, along with like I do with some of the other segments each month, Dennis. I think that would be helpful to people, and that would
Yeah.
be an easy way for people to get some of your insights, and maybe you could give exposure to that, and I'll do the same thing. So look for
Sure.
that. And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah, I was just going to say, Alex, it's not just trends in the IT market, uh, at macro scale, but things like diversity and inclusion, things like
right.
fraudulent candidates in the marketplace, which has peaked since the pandemic. I mean, there's a lot of different areas that we're adding value in, whether our partners are part of the C-suite or part of talent acquisition leadership, procurement departments, so on and so forth. So we do take pride in having that information, and myself personally at our fingertips.
I think that's a really good insight about giving insights, because folks, Dennis has been doing this with us for a couple of years now. You were always doing it at the events, but it was more one-on-one. I would hear you talking about insights, but we started doing the virtual seminars right around the pandemic. We were already doing a few of them a year, but it wasn't every month. And just like the rest of the world, we switched our event platform to online. We're still doing 2 summits a year, or 2 big events a year. And but Dennis has been giving these insights for 2.5 years now, and I get really good reviews on this. So we'll start releasing some of these, Dennis, and just give those for everybody. So if you're watching this, look for those on the Technology Executives Club site, the post, and Dennis, I'm sure you'll have, by the time people see this, some of these up on your profile as well, because I think these could be helpful to people. All right, and then you also talked about providing access to top talent in the other areas that you could help people with. Obviously, access to top talent, right, in your network.
Well, and it's not just, yeah, I mean, it's obviously we have the talent available at all levels, but it's also access to our client base that I mentioned earlier, right? So whether it's to a member or somebody else that's interested in getting involved with Technology Executives Club, right? If they're part of the community, right? We want to open up our opportunities that we have access to, because it's a more challenging market right now, Alex, and it can be very demotivating to be a candidate in this market. You'll look at some LinkedIn jobs that come out and they have one-click apply, and within just a few hours there's thousands of applicants, and that can be very difficult to navigate. I've talked with anywhere from executives, right, to senior professionals, even entry level, really, that are in the marketplace, and no response. Well, that's the great thing of working with an agency, is there's typically an exclusive relationship with that hiring manager, or some type of partnership, right, where they're looking at the resumes that we put in front of the team, right? That's what they're engaging us for. So obviously happy to help and try to connect the dots and see if the stars align.
That's a huge point. I mean, I've talked to a number of people who have tried that approach. I mean, I introduced them to you, it seems like regularly now, where they reach out to me and say, hey, do you know anybody that can help me? I'm still looking for my next opportunity. I talked to a guy the other day, it's been months, and he's extremely qualified. I'm like, well, what have you been doing? He goes, I go online, exactly the way you described it. I said, well, you got to really talk to Dennis and these guys and some other folks also, but it just makes a lot of sense. If somebody brings you on, or someone like you in a firm like yours, and they're going to listen to you, so you have their ear. And if you're on the other side, the CIO, VP, CFO, CO, and you're hiring and you're trying to do this other route, it can be extremely frustrating. And you're not going to get those insights that Dennis is talking about. We talk about this stuff, I'd say not every peer meeting, but every 2 or 3 peer meetings, people are always coming to me and saying, it's still tough to get people. And especially now, you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, and we have a lot of these mid-sized companies that, maybe they're not you know, and typically, especially these third generation, fourth companies that, you know what I'm saying, like a manufacturing or
Sure.
mid-sized company where it's
Yep.
maybe not 100% family business, maybe private equity's bought it, but they still have some of those, I'd say, great old-fashioned values where they think of every employee as part of a family and things like that.
Yeah.
And they want them to come to the office, they want them to work, and you know, the way the market's been in the last few years, like, if I can't sit by the pool wherever I want to, you know. Now, I guess if
Sure.
you're that guy or gal who's like can do anything, maybe you can still command that. But I do think that there is value in being part of a team in person. And so I would urge anybody to maybe loosen up on your demands. And you might find yourself getting a great role, especially coming up. You talk about market cycles. If we do
Yeah.
get a correction, right now we're recording this one end of fall of 2023. If who knows if there is a correction in 24, you're going to find all of a sudden maybe I should have taken that job where they wanted me in the office 3-4 days a week.
Sure.
Right?
Well,
Right?
I mean, remote jobs are great. We're still seeing a lot of remote jobs, but we're
Of
seeing
course.
more. We're seeing less and less week over week. And
Is that right?
you know, the remote jobs are also those jobs that I mentioned on LinkedIn that are getting 2,000 applicants within just a few hours. So, you know, there's that consideration as well. It depends on what you do for a living, and you know,
Yeah, what your role is. Yeah.
sure, yeah, and what your skills are, and but you know, my business it's all timing, and I think that's the staffing and recruiting and talent business really comes down to timing, and that's why a lot of it is network and building these relationships, which has been a theme throughout this conversation. You know, the other thing I'll say, Alex, is we have over 200 full-time SME consultants, right, and across PMO to infrastructure to application development and so on and so forth. So we do a lot of project deliverables, project-based work
Yeah.
at Judge, and you know, a lot of times there's opportunities there as well from you know, as we're expanding that business footprint with within our network, right, of trusted resources.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, and that dovetails into the last point you want. I think you already brought it up, relationship building, you know, areas you like to help people with. I mean, it's been having mentors, learning how to develop relationships. I mean, that's an area that, you know, you and I mean, although we do come from different generations, um, that's still a value that we share. You know, God, I hate to age myself and say I guess I'm old school now, but
Yeah.
that is an old school value set that I still have, and it still pays off for people. And you're saying it's still very much out there. So don't be so
Well,
transactional, I guess is the advice to people.
that, and I think if you're an executive, if you're responsible for personnel, if you're a hiring manager,
Yeah,
you need to build those relationships with your team, and like you got to show them the love, right? Like you really got to show them the love, especially
yeah,
with this new generation of workers. It's always been important, but I think it means even more nowadays with really bringing that team into the culture. And I think that that's something at Judge. We're a privately held company, but we're almost
yeah.
$1 billion in revenues.
Wow, you guys
But,
have really grown. Yeah,
but yeah, but I think that's been the secret weapon for the Midwest teams that I'm responsible for is the culture. That's the secret sauce, right? And I get excited still every week, and I wake up really early, set my alarm really early, and I get to the office every day pretty
wait,
early.
what
And
time are you Mark Wahlberg early? Is it 4:30 in the morning? You're working out? I mean, or is it, what are we saying here?
but well, my first meeting is at 7 a.m.
Oh, you
Central,
do get up
so
early.
I'm
Yeah.
in well before that. So yeah, I'm an early riser.
God bless you. I used to follow Mark Wahlberg on the Instagram. And he's working out at 4:30 because if he's doing a movie or whatever. See,
Yeah.
this is the Mark Wahlberg of recruiting and search.
Love that. Love Mark.
Yeah, he's great. My son met him once at his Wahlburgers in LA, and he said he was so gracious. Came over, he had like 3 or 4 buddies, came over, said hello. Super nice guy, he said. But anyways, back to earth here and back to our world of technology and recruiting and people. I really love your whole approach, Dennis, about how you're in a people business. And
Sure.
I think it's really easy in technology to be thinking about just the technology. And I have some of the best CIOs that I've ever seen, and CFOs and COOs, CXOs. They really focus on people and technology. Everybody, people, process, technology. Technology is third. What's the technology for? It's for people. It's for helping people with whatever work your company is doing for them, whatever values you're giving them. So, and in your business, Dennis, it really is about helping them find people.
Yeah, and I think it will continue to be. I mean, you hear about automation of everything, and and while that's a trend, I don't think that will ever change as much as AI and automation and all of these things. I think it changes the skill set and maybe makes things a little bit more complex, but it still comes down with how you work with people and how you figure out solutions and work and
I totally agree. And as you know, we're devoting our masterclass workshops or a lot of our events. In fact, I would say most of the events to leadership and AI, and it's still call it a different word. It's a digital transformation, but at a much higher level where if you're not creating your company or shifting your organization to be, able to take advantage of AI and, being quantitative and getting work done through the technology and through automation. And I have one of our other sponsors who's one of our great speakers who always talks about being lean. Those days are coming faster and faster where you've got to get that done. So people is really a key part of making all that happen. So with that, Dennis, thank you for all your insights today. Great job. Dennis Anderko, Managing Director of the Judge Group here in the Midwest, but he actually works all over the country. So if you're watching this from New York or Brazil, we'll make a trip to Brazil. But if
we're in South America now.
Miami, I know that. That's why I said that. So you're in South America, but if you're in Miami, Dennis would be happy to come meet you in Miami, I'm sure, especially this winter. But all kidding aside, Dennis, so grateful for you to be on our board of advisors to help other people in our community. And we appreciate you being part of it and giving your time to our community. So Dennis, thank you.
Thanks, Alex. It's been a great friendship over many, many, many years, and excited to continue that forward. So thanks for your time, and happy to be part of it.
Great. Thanks, Dennis.